welcome to Trust the Journey. I'm Melanie Curtis.
I'm Jason Maletsky.
Our mission is to live, laugh, love, and learn together with you.
We're here to create conscious connections, to grow and contribute through our practice of openness, honesty, vulnerability, humility, and trust. Trusting the entire journey.
Heck yes. If you want to connect with us more, team, family, please join us on the internet at trustthejourney.today. We are on Instagram, Facebook, all those things. We also have a Patreon group that gets you into our Trust the Journey family, which is a more interactive and connected group. So you're welcome to join that at any point, and donating on Patreon at any amount gets you in there. So yeah, to get in there, go to trustthejourney.today, and that's it. Here we go.
Ready, Melanie?
Ready.
Yeah. So today we are checking in. Something we've been doing a little bit here and there whenever we feel the need to just kind of push the button and be like, how are you? Yeah. I don't know. How are you?
A lot has happened since we last recorded.
Yeah, true.
I don't even know where to begin. It's a lot, but
a bit of a whirlwind of a world lately.
Yeah. It really is almost hard to choose where to start. But I mean, I can't not immediately recognize, Black Lives Matter movement, the movement rising, and the just. I want to speak to that personally and just share a little bit about my experience with antiracism and listening and learning and taking action relative to trying to help the world be more connected and more one love, like all the things that we talk about, but really in specificity around antiracism. I know, and I say this from the perspective of a white ally, because that's what I am, and that's the, where we are sitting today. It's this show we don't yet have guests on. We look forward to having guests on, and that's something we hope to create at some point. But for now, our format is us sharing our lives and our experiences. So I'm only saying that because otherwise I would care to elevate voices of color and stuff like that more. And that's one of the things people talk about in terms of ways to be of service to that piece of equality. But yeah, I mean, so I don't even know where to start, man. It always makes me a little nervous to talk about this because I've been in this anti-racist work for, since 2016. I mean, before that, but very unconsciously. And when I first sort of had my first awakening around like, oh shit, whoa, I can't even imagine what it's like to be a person of color in America, was in 2016 with Philando Castile and Alton Sterling when they were killed. And luckily, I have the support of my very best friend, Carolyn Chow, who has been in this work, teaching, educating on diversity, equity, and inclusion and anti-racism for her whole career. And it's actually surprises me how long it took me to go, oh, this is a real force in the world and in this country. And so anyway, I woke up then, and I don't know if a lot of people have seen probably about speak, silence is violence, and all that stuff. And I want to share about that because I felt this deep compulsion to share in 2016 when that happened. I recorded a video talking about this and sharing how I didn't know what to do, but that all I wanted to, but what that I did want to do was to learn and to listen. And I recorded that like thinking I would want to use my voice in a powerful way and own it, own where I was on my process then. So I recorded this video and I was just too afraid to share it. I was just too scared. And so I didn't. And then I continued privately to do this work and to listen and to learn. And always felt a little bit like, how do I find my voice around this subject? It was difficult for me, as is typical, I think, for, anybody, I would guess. And again, I can only speak from my experience. But the first time I wrote and used my public voice around any sort of perceptibly divisive concept or idea was when I wrote an article in 2018 for Blue Skies Mag, and I talked about bias and racism and relative to sexism and any kind of bias. So I wrote about unconscious bias, and that felt very scary to me too, because I was very fearful of being in divisive conversations. So anyway, the reason I go on and on about this is that I'm grateful that I did that listening and learning, because it gave me the power to be able to speak now, even though I have also had experiences with kind of trying to make efforts, to be of service to equality and to anti-racism. And I've fucked it up, and those have been extremely painful experiences. And so I am in no way saying I'm perfect at this work. I'm more saying this work is important to me personally, and it feels very aligned with my core belief that we are all connected, that love is the most powerful force. But I also don't want to have those larger concepts keep me from being actionable in a more specific effort. And so for me, I feel very committed to that work of anti-racism. And the reason I'm sharing is because this is one version of a public platform that I have access to. And so it feels really important for me to use this platform to share. And this is a place where I share what's real for me. So, we talk about catching up and like, fuck man, this is a big thing that's going on in my world right now, is like finding my voice. And it's interesting because it's so many more white people are talking now. It's quote unquote easier to speak now. Whereas, and I think that's part of it, but I don't know. And I don't ever want to sound like I feel like I know everything or know what's right or wrong. I don't even know if I believe in those two words personally, but yeah, and I don't even feel that eloquent talking about it right now. I just knew I know I want to. I know that I want to use my platform for sharing about this and inviting, because I am a white person and I'm a white ally, inviting other white people who would like to listen and learn more to, reach out and ask. And I'm happy to support that part of anti-racism work in the world. Also, and this is long and I appreciate you listening, there's a lot more that I could talk about on this subject, by the way. I'm trying to keep it relatively short so that the whole episode isn't about this. But one of the best pieces of advice I got around anti-racism work when I was in a struggle around it, because I went to an event, and it was a deeper sort of connecting event, and we had this exercise where this was last year, so this was 2019, And I was, I had been doing this work, and I basically had found myself at a place where I didn't know what else. I didn't know what to do next. So I was there going, I know that it's not the job of people of color to educate me and tell me what to do. Like, it's my job to figure that out. And I found myself in a place where I didn't know what to do next. And I knew that I didn't want to ask anyone because I knew that that was kind of not cool to do. So we're in this exercise, and it was about your superhero. So, like, you would stand behind an empty chair as your sort of superhero self and talk about what the you of right now would need to do to get to where you want to be. And I had a breakthrough moment in that exercise where I cried because I found some pain in me where I was very clear on how uncertain I was and how I really wanted to know what I could do, and I just didn't know, and I didn't know how to get that information. And so I shared in the more public forum, and I was lucky enough to connect with some people that were very generous with their sharing, both with resources for reading and things to watch and things to do to continue to awaken myself about how implicit bias shows up in my thinking and doing, because that's the idea, is that theoretically we all have racist ideas in our in like kind of baked into us simply because of where we've grown up and the influences around us. So it's unconscious. So it's okay, like we can just look at it and try to undo that. So it's not like, oh, everyone's a bad person. It's more like we can just do that work to undo and illuminate our blind spots. So that's empowering to me, going, oh, okay, I'm not this terrible person. I have work to do just like everyone else. And one of the best pieces of advice that I got, other than the direction to all these amazing resources and things, is to show up in spaces and listen. And I've taken that to serious heart. And that's what I do. I just try to show up in spaces where I wouldn't necessarily show up without intention. Show up in spaces where people don't look like me. Show up in spaces where people have different life experiences than me and listen to what their lived experiences are. And that has been very powerful, and it's something I feel like I will continue to do forever. But anyway, that is so long-winded, and I am so grateful for you listening, Jay, so patiently. But yeah, this is a piece that's been very, very present in my life experience lately, of course. Yeah. And again, I have much more I'm sure I could say, but thank you all for listening.
That is why we're here, right? To listen to each other, in the greater context, the whole reason why we choose to speak in a public forum is to give each other and our listener the chance to be heard in the relationship to those inner voices, the things that we feel that we resonate with inside of each other, right? So in listening, we're also speaking, as you were reflecting, like, sit in a space and listen. So I'm really grateful for your share. I was born in Canada, right? And I lived in Toronto for the first 23 years of my life. And I grew up in a really poor part of the city, and I didn't know that until I went back there to visit many years later and realized how poor the neighborhood really was. And it was only recently that I actually got some perspective on it. And I grew up in a neighborhood where the classrooms were very full. As a second or third grader, you'd have 30 plus children in a classroom, and the average number of Caucasian children in the class would be half a dozen, maybe 8, and that would be a mixture of Scottish, Irish, French Canadian, English Canadian, Polish, anywhere from Eastern Europe. You know, everybody's some big mixture of kids from all over the world who've all made their way to Canada in some way, shape, or form. And we had a lot of kids from like Guyana and Trinidad and Jamaica and all kinds of Caribbean countries, and African kids and Ethiopians and Indians and just people from all over the world. So I didn't understand the concept of racism, even though my mother spent a lot of time trying to educate me about it, because my mom was very active in the proactive discussion of the topic.
Yeah.
So we learned about racism through television, through movies, through books, and through education in school. But I never understood that it existed in the modern day until I came to the States and came to the southern US, and then I saw the segregation firsthand, and how it's still a modern context that black people live on one side of town and white people live on the other side of town. I mean, the town that I live here in DeLand, it's very separated. Yeah. There's very clearly the north side and the south side of town. And I've lived on both sides of town. And when you live on the south side, it's heavily black population. You live on the north side, it's heavily white population. And I've never seen that. I'd never experienced that was something that even existed until I came to the States. And it really took some understanding of like, oh my God, this is still a thing. And lately what's been on my mind is kind of in a bigger picture relationship to everything that's happening in the world, is I feel a bit duped to being privileged, right?
Yeah.
I grew up in this concept where I thought, and it was kind of heartbreaking to realize this, is that I thought that we were over as a species. I thought we were over a lot of the big challenges already, like the environment,
Right.
like actually caring about the environment, because, you know, it's pretty nice and clean in Canada and it's all, you know, well taken care of, or at least we're told that.
Right.
Even though it's not. And things like racism and things like equality among genders, and
LGBTQ plus. Yeah.
Thank you. Yes.
Yeah.
It's a little slow
Socioeconomic.
still.
Yeah.
Everything. So
Able-bodied.
I feel kind of duped because deforestation, you know, pollution, all the things. I thought that, I mean, if I think back to like my perspective as, I say, a 9 or 10-year-old child, I thought like, yes, we're winning the battle because we've recognized that all these things exist in society. We've taken action to correct them, and we're on the other side of the hill, per se. You know, like we've crested the top of the bell curve, and now the battle has been won, and we're just dealing with the little remaining outliers that haven't yet been, you know, attended or educated. And all we have to do is educate them. If we just educate them, give them a little bit, they'll get it, and they'll jump on and be like, oh, this is obviously the right way to go. And I think in a greater sense, coming to realize as an adult that that's not really what's the state of the world, that really the state of the world is far from having realized the greater sense of it all. It's been a big cause for like depression and anxiety and just stress, and this feeling of like, fuck, what the fuck, people? We should have figured this out ages ago. Like, ages ago. How long should we have figured out that there's no difference between what color your skin is?
Right.
Or what genitalia you have, right? Like, who cares?
Yeah.
So I find myself frustrated and angry that we're still talking about this stuff, having grown up in this idea that it didn't matter, that it was irrelevant, that it was history.
Yeah.
You know? And then coming to realize that there's still places where, like here, where this is on the table.
Yeah.
For discussion, when it, to me, this is not even up for discussion.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
why are we discussing this? You know, it's something we should have, as a species, we should understand already.
I look forward to that day too, my friend. I love that you brought up privilege and that of course the understanding the privilege, the blindness that we experience when we are in privilege. Yeah, the concept of color blindness, of course, is not helpful when in systems that are, racist, like have racist ideas driving them. So, because of course, what we are not colorblind, we see that a person is a black person, we see that a person is a white person, we see that a person is an Asian person or whatever, and so of course we're not actually colorblind. The idea is the way that I understand it, is that, yeah, we're not colorblind. So it's recognizing what unconscious blind spots we have around how we relate to what we see. And so, yeah, that is, and that's the thing that empowers me is like, okay, what can I do to be of service? I can, again, continue to show up, listen, learn, and continue to do my best to take positive action, even if I fuck it up. Like be really committed to that growth process, however messy it may be, and it, in my experience, is messy. So be ready and be okay with that. That's the good work. We know that in any kind of growth work. You know what I mean? That it's messy, it's painful. We can get, like I said, we can pass the mic, which people talk about that a lot, like really elevating, if we can, voices of color and sharing and donating to things that support the equity and of our world and all of those things. But yeah, from the perspective of doing healing work, like as the life coach, as someone who works with people on the simple concepts of undoing unconscious programming that doesn't serve them, like even just the most basic gremlin thought of like, I'm not good enough. We all have some version of that. Most people do anyway. Not everybody, but maybe I would guess most people do. In my experience, most people do. It's the same type work. So that excites me from a perspective of service, of going, I can most likely be usefully in conversation with white friends who have blind spots to racist ideas that they might have grown up around. Again, it's not that people with racist ideas are bad people. It's just that we grew up around it. So we have to just look in those blind spots of our mind. Similarly, if we grew up with a rough family situation and we didn't feel loved, we could have this idea of I'm not lovable. And that can hide in the recesses of our mind and drive our actions and drive our choices in relationship and drive our choices about what we think we can achieve and all those things. So from that perspective, I go, okay, cool. I have some expertise in that area. How can I apply that strength that I have to my own anti-racism work and illuminating my blind spots ongoing and facilitating discussions and conversations around helping others illuminate theirs as well. So that's one place where I'm excited about what I can potentially do.
I don't. I applaud your efforts, and I recognize the intention and the energy and the commitment that it takes to be involved in a movement that is so emotionally taxing, and there's so much history, there's so much anger, there's so much hatred, and all these deep roots of negativity, right, that have been embedded for generations and generations and generations. And healing that isn't something that's going to happen quickly. It's going to take a very long time for that to heal. And I think that's a lot of what we're seeing is this desire for not only there to be equality, but for there to be a space for that to heal.
Yeah, healing, for sure, healing.
Yeah.
No doubt. One thing that I just kind of want to, for whatever reason, want to share this. this, like, because we're talking about catching up. What have we been doing since we last recorded? I mean, seriously, since we last recorded, a fucking lot has happened. Like, shit. I mean, I can't even get over how much has happened in the world, but just in life. I went and spent 3 weeks with my parents, which was super awesome. Making time inside of this COVID, life experience. I quarantined myself so I could go see them and we could be together and hug and all the things that, people are well, I was missing anyway. Anyway, so my mom and I went for a bunch of walks. We talked a lot, and I'll tell you, they say that talking to your family is the most challenging. And in some ways I would say that that's true because it's the most emotional. Like I love them so much and that type of thing. But I'm really happy with the conversations that we were able to have. But anyway, my mom and I were walking one day in my hometown, in the town that I grew up in. We were having these chats and, occasional moments of silence where we were just taking in what we were seeing and stuff. And I was thinking about this unconscious bias and just what was going on in the world and everything. And I was having memories of my younger self, of myself as a kid, seeing things. And I had two distinct memories that are connected to this idea of, oh shit, unconscious bias, but oh shit, something happens to me and I carry it forward blindly for my life. And one was, I remember being the kid who discriminated against people with a lower socioeconomic status. So like poorer people, we would call them the scummy people. And I was like, ugh, sort of like remembering that going, damn, that sucks. That fucking sucks. Not trying to beat myself up, but just recognizing that and going, that's where I was unconscious as a younger person. And yeah, I've dismantled that over the course of my life, but just really wanting to get real with myself. And it's helpful, I think, for me to just see it because it's all over, all over. And that's something where I was sort of the active participant. And then the other story was we walked by where my old elementary school was. And I remembered I have this vivid memory of being in a race with like a foot race. We just, running, trying to sprint to the end and who's going to win. It was me, and there were, I think, a few other boys. I don't know if any other girls participated in the race. I can't remember. All I remember is I won, and this one boy was super upset about it. And I remember basically going again. And I don't know if I lost on purpose or if he actually beat me the second time. I can't really remember, but why I bring this up is that it sticks out to me as a story of going, that person got upset, that the boy got upset, that the girl can't be the one to win in this environment, in this athletic environment, that was not okay. And so I'm grateful that didn't necessarily persist, given I did follow a road of athleticism in my life and career. But anyway, that's just another story that popped out from when I was home.
Is it nice to spend time with your family?
So nice. So grateful.
I made a trip back to Canada back in December, and I spent a few days with my family, and I hadn't been there in quite some time, and it was really nice and grounding to have that check-in with, blood relatives and people I hadn't seen for a long time. And, we don't see each other that often, but it's super nice when you have that rooted connection that you can just immediately feel, and it's super relaxed. So I've had a lot going on.
Fill me in.
Yeah.
Let's hear it.
Well, I don't know, for our listenership as well, for about a year now, coming up on a year now, I've been pretty much living a introspective life where I've been working from home for the most part and trying to create routine for myself and being working to become more self-aware, to improve my understanding of self, my awareness of self, where my thoughts are, what my actions are, all the things that are happening in my life and why they're happening, and truly like focusing on my own growth as a person, to be just more mindful of who I am, what I'm doing, why I'm doing it, and how it's all making me feel. And what are the things that I'm doing that I'm unaware of, and what are the things that I'm doing that I'm aware of but ignoring, and just the whole gamut. And I kind of got sick of myself at some points. Like there are some things about myself that I'm sick of it. I'm just sick of my own behaviors, or sick of my own attitudes, or the different things about myself that I'm like, I've been this way my whole life and this is a shitty way to be. And learning to recognize a lot of those things. And since the world went on lockdown and everybody is now in this like stay home kind of concept, it kind of put an amplifier on things in a lot of ways for everybody. I'm sure everybody's feeling the same thing of like, okay, now I'm just home with myself and my family, and now I just have to be with all this all the time. And so it's like being forced into meditation where you're like, okay, now I just have to sit here and deal with my own thoughts. And how fun is that?
Right?
Because most of us haven't put a lot of time, and I'm speaking from my own perspective here, into what are my thoughts and why am I thinking them, and how do I better align them or tune them to thoughts that I actually serve me and that are good for me, and all this stuff. And then what am I doing to make it better? And I've gone like everybody, and I've gone through these big waves of like, okay, I'm doing really good with stuff. I'm exercising a lot. I'm eating great and sleeping well, and I'm not drinking or doing, positives and negatives up and down. And then it just waves the other direction where, things go out the window. And so I've really been struggling in this last few months to maintain, and at times it's gone really well. Like I was really hitting the exercise really hard, and then it just peeled right off, and started getting really frustrating. And so what have I been saying to myself? And it's funny, it's like I said this to myself a few times recently, and it came up. Then I've heard it said back to me. The universe is awesome this way, where you're like, this is what I'm thinking. And then you start hearing it, boom, it pops up in your social media. And somebody actually says it to you. That's the same thoughts you're having. It's like, I basically shit and sat in it. And I'm just like, I'm just going to sit here until I figure out what the fuck I'm going to do about this mess that I've made for myself. Because nobody's going to come and clean my fucking dirty diaper for me, because it's my dirty diaper and I made it and I'm a freaking adult,
Love it.
So I've been sitting here in my pile of shit going, all right, Jay, what are you going to do about this? And have my little temper tantrum, get, diaper rash, get all pissy about it. And who's listening? Nobody, because it's just me complaining to myself at this point, because I'm sitting here by myself, And, yeah, it's been a challenge, and I've been dealing with a bunch of medical issues. As I've had a lot of stress in my life, and I've been having some GI issues for a long time, and I've been trying to attend to them, and I don't know what's going on.
What does that mean?
I've been in a bunch of gastrointestinal.
Oh, okay, got it.
Yeah, so the last couple of weeks I've been back in the doctor's offices getting scoped and getting probed and doing all these procedures and having all kinds of tests done, and I don't know what's going on, but I'm in a lot of pain. I'm having all this system-wide stuff going on too. I have inflammation everywhere. My joints are all getting super angry. So I've got a lot of stuff going on medically, mentally, spiritually. Last week I had an anxiety attack in the middle of a meeting.
Oof.
Working.
Wow.
And all of a sudden I got a massive wave of chest pain, and my chest started to get really tight. My hands started to shake. My arms started tremoring.
Wow.
My breathing started to get all clamped up. I had to drop the call, take a self-assessment. Thought, okay, first thing, I might be having a heart attack. I don't think so, but it might be. So straight to some aspirin and a glass of water. Then I'm like, do I call 911? what do I do? First thing, I'm like, well, I'm going to inform somebody so that I'm not just the only one having, and so I went through this whole session of like a proper anxiety attack, and I'm pretty proud of myself that I did a really good job of doing a legit medical assessment and managing the situation in a way that's the correct route, but yeah, going to the ER and getting checked in for chest pain.
Wow.
And having EKGs and heart chest x-rays and all that stuff done in the midst of all this, COVID stuff going on and the world revolting against itself.
Yeah.
So I'm feeling this resonant energy of my own individualized experience relative to the world's collective experience of like, we have made this pile of shit for ourselves as a species, as a collective being on Earth, the human species, and now we are sitting in it and we have to deal with it, and growth is not fun. And nobody in the world right now is having a good time with what's going on.
Exactly.
Nobody is like, yeah, this is awesome. No, there's nobody.
Correct.
Right?
Everybody I can't imagine it anyway.
Yeah. No, everybody is going, this sucks. Right? And so I feel like there's this relevant mirror, and I think a lot of people can relate to that there is this mirror going on and going, what's going on in the bigger picture? And a lot of us are thinking, what's the bigger picture piece here? What's the growth change? And of course there's conspiracy theorists and there's all the different ways you can go, but I think we're growing.
I do too.
I think as a species we're growing and we're trying to figure it out.
Yeah. I agree. I definitely think we're growing. I mean, God, even if we're not on the upswing yet, you know what I mean? Like breakdown equals, breakdown precedes breakthrough. I definitely believe that if everything is for us, like I completely, deeply believe, I believe that what's happening is for us. I believe that it is necessary for our trajectory, and that excites me too. And again, it's not that every day I'm like, yeah, this sucks, so I'm excited, but when I'm able to access the positive thinking, that's where I go.
So this is one of the things that I find as a value awareness piece anyways, is that at least in my own perspective, and I can only ever speak from my point of view, I have rarely, if ever, I don't know if I ever have been able to truly heal and cure and heal whatever issue or wound or damage or trauma or whatever it might be, illness, disease, whatever word you want to put next to something that is wrong, without first identifying the problem. Right? Clearly identifying the problems. And I think that at least inside of my own experience right now is like that, like searching around and like trying to put a finger on specifically where are the problems.
Yeah.
I think that I'm experiencing that individually, and I see the world doing that a lot too, going, this is a problem and this is a problem, and these are things we're not happy about.
Yep.
Within ourselves.
Yeah, and for me too, like as it relates to the antiracism stuff and just any growth stuff, any growth path or goal that we're after that's hard, which anything worth doing and of deep fulfilling value usually comes with a lot of struggle in my experience. We have to keep going when we're not posting about things on the internet, when it's not cool anymore. It's really important to keep going and doing the actual day-to-day iterative, we've talked about this a million times, the iterative process of what growth and progress and healing actually it looks like. You know what I mean? So it's one thing to be in the swell of a moment, and it's quite another to be a person that continues it when it's either not cool and or when it's really hard and or when our old habits want to sneak back in, because they will try. They will. It's just Anyway, you know what I'm talking about.
So here's one of my recent awarenesses in the last few months. I've come to take awareness of this, is that when I'm challenged and having a hard time getting through a difficult task, there's something I'm working on, and it involves deep thought to come to the other side of. And now this can be work related, it can be personal related. It's a general thing where, like, if I'm working hard on something and I'm like, what's the answer here? What's the answer? What's the answer? You know, like, oh, is it this way, or is it this way, or is it this way? And I'm doing that higher reasoning, right? Like trying to process out an answer, trying to squeeze water from the stone,
Right.
per se. What happens is I get up and I walk away from my challenge and I go look for food. I just stand up and I start walking in the direction. I can't tell you how many times I catch myself and I'm like, where am I going?
Nice.
Why am I walking in the other room right now? Why am I in the kitchen? Why am I just ate lunch 20 minutes ago.
Right.
Why am I in here? You know, and it's an ego, fearful ego, running away because the problem is challenging my ego. My ego is struggling to be okay with not knowing.
Yeah.
Because my ego doesn't know the answer. Like the part of me that's right in front that everybody can see. I'm like, if you ask me the answer to this, I'm going to say I don't know because I haven't figured it out yet.
Right.
And I'm expected to know the answer because the part of me that's working on this really expects that I'm going to get to the answer. And so it's just one of the, like, so many examples of these behaviors where why am I getting up and walking into the room? You know, I'm walking away from the problem when it's hard because I'm challenged by it, and I run off to a comfort place to something that's going to make me comfort the ego by feeding it, you know?
Yeah, I do. I definitely know. What's fascinating is that, no joke, I haven't done a ceremonial healing session in a while, since it was just about a year ago, for my last one, a little bit, just shy of a year. And I've been thinking about this because I've been sort of feeling like it's soon. I think it'll be ready to do, or it's like it will be time for my next ceremony. And I'm very trusting of my intuition and guidance around choosing that when it's time, and watching for my own avoidance as well, because it's so hard work, such hard work. It's so hard and scary every time. But so healing every time too. It's like this microcosm of what we're talking about, this big breakdown and fire and rah and shit sandwich and everything.
Yum.
all condensed in a short period. Yeah. So you get a lot out of it. But anyway, the very short thing that I was going to say is that the idea that keeps coming to me is why am I so ravenous? Like, there's something around food for me where, I don't make terrible decisions all the time, but there's something there that I can't quite determine and can't quite get it. Like, but I feel like there's something around why I feel like I'm so hungry all the time.
I think that what I'm seeing in myself anyways is that the concept of addiction, right? The general concept of addiction is an avoidance of something.
Yeah.
Right? So something is getting replaced with something else. Right? So there's some thought, feeling, emotion, buried trauma, whatever it might be. Something's going on inside of self. The ego has some battle. And the way that the ego deals with it is by satiating it with something else. Mm-hmm. And generally, those fall into the categories of sugar, salt, alcohol, caffeine, drugs, attention, seeking, anything at all, to be like, I'm just gonna put the focus back on something else. Mm-hmm. Switch a focus switcher to some other kind of thing, and it's really, at least I have been taking personal note of what is, what are the things that are coming up. Like if I'm standing there with a bag of cookies in my hand, is it truly because I wanted a cookie? Because I like cookies? Because cookies are great. Don't let me, I'm not saying anything bad about cookies. Cookies are freaking awesome. And there's nothing wrong with wanting a cookie because cookies are awesome.
Right.
But if the reason why I'm getting cookies is because I don't like the way I was feeling 30 seconds ago, and I'm now using cookies as my way to, shut down that feeling that I was having and uncomfortable with, well, now the reason why I'm having a cookie is not because I like cookies. It's because I don't like the way I was feeling.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, it's fascinating. It really, really is. And again, that I feel like is the work. What does avoidance look like? What does addiction look like? What does stored pain feel like? What does, you know what I mean? Like what does it mean to unearth trauma and purge it? What does that look like? There's so much there. And that's what's also so exciting to me about being in the work of and being in the conversation with other collectives that I'm a member of, is being in this conversation around solutions. Like, cool, shit's going down, yo, in the world. What can we actually do? Like really transmuting pain into the transformative action and into the transformation individually in each of us, however that might manifest. So that excites me. And honestly, one of the things I think about a lot is, and I'm so excited to know is happening, is the legalization efforts around psychedelic healing and the efforts to get things approved by the FDA and like really remove the legislation and policy from back in the 60s that basically kept it from the public.
Yeah, we're definitely on the right path in that area as a society. And I think that's just another example of how our collective consciousness is making its voice heard about what we need and what we want and don't want as part of our collective experience as a species.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I want to share something else.
Please.
It's a realization that I came to recently, and I want to share it because I feel like first there's two things about it. One is that it will be powerful and healing for me to share it. Just by sharing it, I'll be like, okay, this is a healing step in the process just to talk about it. Also, by talking about things that are hard to talk about or that are questionable topics or whatever, it creates an opportunity for others to be like, oh, I can do that too. And therefore I can also have these, create these opportunities for myself where I can relate, And I think that's our whole mission here, right, is creating those connections. So I've been aware my whole life that I struggle with depression. Okay. And I've been aware of it on a low-lying level where I have isolated it into little buckets. So one of the places where I've always identified that I have a depression period is around the holidays. So I've related that, and so I'm putting a bit of backstory in here to create some context for this because I want people to understand where it comes from. So I always related my depression around the holidays to the fact that both of my parents died when I was quite young, and that the holidays brought up a series of brokenheartedness, right? Where I'm like, oh, now it's the time to be with your family. And I lost my family. My parent figure is very young. And so here's my excuse for being depressed, right? Because I have this thing where I'm like, well, now I'm sad because I haven't had this period. And so I created this story around it. And what I've come to realize lately is I have chronic depression. I have depression almost every single day of my life. And I wasn't aware of it until just in the last few weeks. And I've been listening to disc talks and reading and learning about depression and starting to recognize. And I heard specifically, I was listening to Duncan Trussell talking about it. Had a little piece of his podcast that he aired talking about depression. It was a couple weeks ago. And it's a great little share. And he's, depression is when you open your eyes in the morning or you wake into consciousness and you don't want to get out of bed. Never mind, don't want to get out of bed. You don't want to be conscious, And I realized that I've been battling this every single day of my life, my whole life. And I bet that there's so many people right now who are listening who go, oh my God, I totally get that. Right? Like the second that I come into wakeful consciousness, the very instant of consciousness, there's this like, no, I don't want to be conscious. Because if I'm conscious, then I have to feel all the memory and all the pain and all the traumas, or I have to deal with the way the world is right now. I have to be part of this society. I have to have my family. I have to have all the things that I have. And that's hard and that's scary and that hurts. And so there's this battle that occurs between being asleep, which is like restful, quiet, should be, and being awake. And I've been going through this thing lately where the second that I start to awaken, I realize I'm conscious to the unconscious desire to quiet the consciousness. And so there's this duality occurring within myself where I'm like, oh shit, there it is. I don't want to fucking be awake because I don't want to have to face my life and I don't want to have to deal with, it's this this negative construct, right? That is just like, that's hiding away from everything. And I realize I've been doing this every single day of my life.
Wow.
And rare are the days where the first thought upon waking are, yes, like, I'm stoked right now to be awaking, that I'm alive, that I'm actually waking up to a positive thankfulness, a gratitude, and excitement. And it's a deep, deep, deep thing to be at that. Like, that's like the primary polarity. Is it like negative upon awakening or positive upon awakening? And that's what I've been battling with lately, is what's the energy that I'm going to bring into my life. And it's a lot of it's automatic, like it's not something that I'm consciously choosing. I'm unconscious, and then I'm in this battle with not wanting to be conscious, and then suddenly start to become conscious and go, no, I don't want to be in this battle. I don't want to be feeling like I don't want to be awake. I'm glad I'm alive. I'm super stoked to be here. I have all these things I'm happy about. I have people I love. I have all the things that are important to me, but there's still this desire to just shut it all down, like to not want to be part of it,
Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing that.
Yeah. You're welcome. Thank you for allowing this space, because that's what it's all about.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, I cannot imagine, like you said, people listening aren't totally relating. And the reason I bring that up is because here you still are, showing up and doing your best to figure it out. I love that. I mean, this is so resonant around everything we've been talking about today. You're like, something is going on that seems wrong, quote unquote, that seems off, that isn't necessarily, quote unquote, working. So, and I'm awakening to a new awareness around something that's painful. And what can I do? And so I love that you're learning and you're going, okay, what? I haven't necessarily learned a lot about depression over my life, even though I've experienced it. And so I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, that's what it sounds like you're doing. And that's, there's so much empowerment, I feel like, in that, not like in the learning, that we can start to find next steps and ways to manage and move through and continue through the challenges that we face. So I love that. I mean, what are you finding out? What are you learning?
These, just the awarenesses, the irony is in having the greater picture awareness, right? Like the bigger picture awareness, be like, okay, I understand positivity is the road. So this is the thing that I laugh at myself about, is like all the things that are happening in the world right now. I'm like, the answer hasn't changed. The answer is still love. The answer is still compassion. The answer is still gratitude. Totally. Nothing has changed, right? The answer is the same as it's always been. And the challenge is staying stuck in the question instead of moving into the answer. And I think that's what I've learned, is like, that's what I come to aware, is like when I'm waking up in this state of battle within my own self-awareness or consciousness or life, or how I feel about anything, if this battle is going on, I'm in the question of, rather than in the knowing awareness of the place to be, which is in gratitude, in compassion, in self-love, in love for all, in just, and so what an irony life is, right? What an irony.
Yeah. Well, and it's one thing to be connected to that energy. It's another thing to know and determine what that looks like actionably in the micro, And so that's where I think a lot of us get stuck. And I know I've had experiences of feeling stuck like that plenty of times, and still do all the time. What is love in this scenario? Whether it's self-love to me, whether it's collective love, whether it's healing a societal wound, whether it's healing a wound in myself, whether it's helping a friend heal, like, what is love in this scenario? And I believe, in my experience, it's a consistent practice to do your best to choose what that is, to do your best to go, I think love is this. And maybe, and you know what, when it's really rooted in love, even if it kind of like ends up in a messier outcome, or you fuck something up or whatever, like I was saying earlier, it's okay, because it's still part of that learning process and growth process, but you know what I mean?
Messy is fine. Have you ever painted a picture?
Yeah, right? Exactly.
I mean, painting can create the most beautiful works of art. It's an incredibly messy process.
Totally. Yeah.
Right? You're making something incredibly like the construct of what you're creating is this piece of art. At the same time, your palette and your brushes and the floor and your smock,
right.
Everything is covered in paint. It's like there is a duality to this whole thing, where we have to remember we can't just focus on the outcome and say this is attachment, right? It's focusing on the outcome.
Yes.
And allow ourselves to be in the experience and enjoy the messiness. And so I'm sitting in my shit. I'm smearing it everywhere. Yeah, fuck, man.
What a life.
The world's crazy, and so's life, and thank God we're here, and thanks for listening, and thanks for you, Melanie, and
thank you for you. Thank you, everyone listening. Seriously. It's a fascinating thing. I really am thankful for everyone listening, and definitely for you, of course, but like, man, it is a thing to share, It really is part of the healing process and part of the messy process, I believe, to share into safe spaces. You know what I mean? So like, theoretically, the vast public is not a, quote unquote safe space, as in anyone can find our podcast and go listen to it and then come back with whatever they want to come back to based on what we share, if they do. And so we have, chosen that level of that level of sharing.
Vulnerability.
Yeah, that level of vulnerability, totally. And it's taken time, by the way, for me to get there. And Jay, when we first started the podcast, we would laugh around, yeah, I've had to do this by myself for so long. I had to do it by myself for so many years, being just out there as a voice, feeling all the things that I felt, being like, is this even cool? Do people think, like whatever, all the worries that you have about being and stepping into your voice. And that is something that, that process of stepping into our voice and the vulnerability around that, no matter what it looks like. You could be leading a webinar for fucking work and it still could feel like you're sharing your voice. Sharing vulnerably, like the way that we do on this show and in the family and all of that, that's a different version of vulnerability, but it's still the same process and the same sort of just version of growth of being able to step into being heard and being seen in more and more like public ways. Because like we could be in a one-on-one conversation and in sharing could be massively vulnerable, and that is just as valid as us doing a podcast where we share vulnerably.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Anything else, my friend? This is a good one, per usual.
Yeah. Yeah.
I have much more to
actually,
say. But
I would say I would like to take like 30 seconds and just dedicate it to silence as a gratitude practice for everybody who's struggling in the world right now. Thanks to everybody who listens to our podcast. Thank you for everybody who's working to become better and to grow and to improve our species as a whole.
yeah.
And thank you, Melanie, for holding space. And thank you, Jay, for holding space. And you know where to find us.
Yes, indeed. Yeah. And like I said earlier, any new or growing, any white allies out there that want to be in conversation with other white people. And again, I invite white people because of we're taking the onus off people of color to educate us and help us grow as allies. So that's why I invite white people who are looking to grow around anti-racism work to reach out. Truly, let me know. I'd be happy to be in that dialogue anytime. And I agree with everything Jay just said, the gratitude and everything for all of you. Trustthejourney.today to find us, and we love you so much. Keep laughing, keep loving, and keep
trusting the journey.
trusting the journey.
Yeah.